the order of a modifier stack is very important as well, because it's kind of like, think about like your timeline. So let's say we would like to create something like a hand grip, which is cored out, but it has small elements or grooves cut on the outside surface. So here we have a cylinder. Let's say we make a smaller cube. There we scale this one down, move this one maybe, let's say, till there. S and Y, Control A to apply the scale, and then we go to an array modifier and say along the z-axis double offset the width and go up. Perfect. So I can, for example, take those cubes and cut it out of the cylinder. Okay, so Boolean difference, so cut this one out. But the problem is I completely cut through it. So I would like to have only small rims actually, or small depressions on the surface. So what I can do now, I can actually, with this object selected, say Alt D, press escape, and for example delete this modifier. You see now I have actually a clone, and because this is a cylinder right now, I can simply say S and then Shift Z, for example, to scale it down a little bit. So I define actually now my surface volume, and I will S and Z scale it down a little bit. Okay, so why did I do this? So for example, this maybe I call my, let's say, core or shell thickness. So to this object, I will add Boolean operation and say union, and then say add the shell thickness. So what's the end result? You see actually the way how it looks. Let's maybe go into a cut section view, and there. So without, and then with the volume added. And now actually I would like, for example, to core this one out. So I could now say, maybe with the same object, Shift S here, U, I make an Alt D, another clone, scale this down a little bit more, and then S and Z, and actually I move this one up a little bit, let's say till there. Okay, perfect, good. And then U, Boolean difference, and cut this core out and make this one a wire. Okay, and then this one is a wire. Okay, Shift H there. Good. So maybe let's go into a cut section view and take a look at what we have, and there you see now what our end result is. So first we cut completely through it, then we build back some volume, and then actually we simply cored it out, because if we would change the orders, so thickness and core, let's say we would first say we just core it out, and then maybe we add the thickness, and then we cut the ribs. Yeah, we get something like this. So it makes no sense. So in this case, if we change ribs and thickness, yeah, that works. But because I add the thickness, I cancel out the core. So you see now how this actually is just cored out, but with the ribs. So this is actually this might be okay in case you just want to have the thickness and then we cut these grooves out. No? So solid object, we core it out, we cut the grooves in. But in case we only want small depressions, then actually this core out has to be at the end, and after we cut the ribs, we add the thickness, so we build back material and then we just cut. Okay, I hope this makes sense, kind of like how you have to sometimes, based on the end result you want, how you have to create an order in how you subtract or remove, or and how you add volumes or parts to an object. A different case, for example, to illustrate you how you have to organize your modifier steps is, let's say we would like to have multiple strips of a label perfectly bent over our cylinder, and then we give it a little bit of thickness. So let's say we say array modifier 0, 2, 3, 4 steps. Okay, so I know I could, for example, shrink wrap it onto this object along project y positive. Is this positive? It is y positive, but you see nothing happens, and that's actually because currently this label is too wide, because these points, when we project and move them along y, there's no geometry behind to touch. So, for example, we could maybe add some loop cuts, and you see now this works instantly. And maybe let's do this via the subdivision surface modifier. Let's go simple, so it's linear, and you see I don't get the same result. So I have my object, I array it, I project it, and then I subdivide it. Well, actually the subdivision should be in front of the shrink wrap, so logic wise I array it, I add more details, so I have more points, and then I can shrink wrap it. And maybe we can add 4 more steps, but the problem is the edges don't touch it right now. And in real life, for example, we would take a label and then bend it over it, and because of the material stiffness, it's not a big deal. Digitally, this is very difficult. So what we do is we need to, before we project, actually bend this label. So we will add a simple deform, move it above the shrink wrap. Let's go to bend. So you see bend uses the z-axis, also the orientation of our object is important. And maybe let's bring this one closer so it can nearly hug it. But you see actually this result is terrible. Probably there's a scale factor. Yes, there is. So object, apply scale. Now this is much better. So you see actually now that I pre-bent this label nicely into position, and now I can perfectly snug it onto the surface. So the label should have some thickness. We can now easily add a Solidify modifier. Let's say to the outside, so you see it better. I make it 5 centimeters, and there it is. The Solidify modifier also has to be at the end, because if we push it in front, for example, of the shrink wrap, this is what happens. So we have the mesh, we bend it, we give a volume, and then we just flatten it with the shrink wrap command. Because a shrink wrap doesn't care if it's a volume or a surface, it just flattens it. Think about it like in cloth iron. And that's why the Solidify has to be at the end. Also, FYI, with the Solidify command, also there it is very important what direction the normal faces. you see now actually that the result is incorrect. And based on where the normal face is, the Solidify goes to. So now actually I have to invert this one. Okay, and that's kind of like another example to show you how you can work with the modifier stack to create very specific deformations. And this is kind of like really the way how also the timeline will work in Fusion, where you should think about like logical steps. And this is all basically pure logic, making an array, more points, pre-bending, projecting, adding thickness.